video, I'm going to be talking to you about understanding attachment theories, attachment styles, and relationships. So this is a really great video for you guys. I think you're going to really appreciate and love this one because it's going to be so helpful to you with relationships. Understanding attachment theory and attachment styles is really the key to understanding romantic relationships. And attachment theory basically explains romantic love. Human beings are wired to connect and form relationships with others. And it's like a survival code that's designed to keep us safe. We don't have wings, so we can't fly away. We don't have claws to defend ourselves. The primary way that human beings are safe is through our relationships to others. So we form attachment with others to help us, feel safe, to help us be safe, and to help us stay close and count on the other people that we're bonded with. Okay? So, let me explain how this works. When we form our attachment with our caregivers, this takes place very early on. Now, our caregivers also attach to us. And if they didn't, we'd be in real trouble. They'd be able to abandon us, they'd be able to leave us in the woods, and we would die. Because human beings cannot take care of themselves as a child, as an infant. We're required to count on others to take care of us. Obviously, turtles or lizards or, a lot of other animals can take care of themselves at birth. We can't do that. So we have to connect with others. Without it, we'd be a goner. So, if our caregivers are emotionally attuned with us, they're attentive to our needs, they give us love, attention, change us, feed us, play with us, we learn a healthy, secure attachment. It's a safe connection. This is so important because the most important ingredient in love for children and our romantic partners is emotional responsiveness. Okay? If you have an emotionally responsive bond, you can create a good love relationship, and you'll learn the skills to making it last. Okay, this video is going to be incredibly helpful for you to understand love, for you to understand attachment styles, your partner's attachment style, and ultimately that will help you with both of your needs because you'll understand what they need and you'll understand what you need so you can communicate it better. And you'll understand why each of you need those things. So, this is another critical point, and I do bring this up sometimes. Human beings have two primary fears in relationships. The fear of abandonment and the fear of being smothered or engulfed. And it's so critical to understand this in your relationships because it affects everything that we do. And we're constantly trying to balance that in a relationship. That's the real struggle, is balancing both of those fears because you have two people experiencing each of those fears. And, it's going to go back and forth, and it's like a juggling act, and you're constantly trying to balance it for both of you. So you're both getting your needs met, and it's not easy to do. So, fear of abandonment, one extreme. That's essentially separation anxiety. And our body is wired so that if we lose our caregivers, we feel tremendous amounts of fear. The fear of death, essentially, because that's what's going to happen if we lose our caregivers. It's called primal panic. And what happens is our body makes us terrified that our safety depends on finding our loved one. And our brain sets off an alarm that keeps saying, I need comfort, I have to be finding my partner or my caregiver, I need safety, I need to be reunited with them. If I don't, you're just constantly in terror and fear. And your body is in survival mode, and it keeps you on a heightened alert. And there's all kinds of things that happen. Chemicals get released that cause you to be stressed, and you can't stop thinking about the caregiver or the romantic partner, and you're going to be stressed, and all kinds of bad things are going to happen like that if it stays that way. And that's what happens to a lot of us in our childhood and in our relationships with our caregivers, which ultimately affects our relationship with our romantic partners. So, like I said, our body releases chemicals, and we are put into a hyper-arousal state where all we're thinking about, consumed with, is finding our caregivers. That's all we can do, is focusing on that until we find them. And if you think about, and I always give this example because it's so telling, and we've all seen it. The kid lost at the store. Crying, shuts down, on the floor, bawling, inconsolable. That's the primal panic. And when we go through a breakup, when somebody breaks up with us, that's essentially the same thing that's happening, is that primal panic that we would experience losing a caregiver. Now it just transfers over to our romantic relationships. So, if you grew up in an environment where you were constantly feeling like your caregivers were going to abandon you, if they were inconsistent with giving you attention, if we didn't feel heard, understood, if we felt ignored, and that the love was conditional, if our parents were not emotionally responsive to us, we form an insecure attachment style. And, there are three. Anxious and avoidant are the two primary ones. There's one called disorganized, but it's very rare, so I'm not even going to go into it because I think they usually find that in kids that have been adopted or extreme abuse or kind of both. They're like in the foster care system a lot of the time. But it's very, very rare. It's like, I think maybe 3% at the most. So, you form your attachment style primarily in the first 2 years of your life. And it usually stays that same way throughout your life. It can change, but the research shows that it's in the 70-75% range, that it's going to stay the same. If you lose a loved one, like a caregiver at an early age, like through a death or maybe some kind of extreme abuse or traumatic incident, there's a chance of it changing. But primarily, those 2 to 3 years are so critical. Whatever the attachment style we formed with our caregivers then tends to stay with us through the rest of our life. So, what do we do as adults? We recreate a very similar type of relationship with our romantic partners that we had with our caregivers. And it's because we're attracted to the familiar, to what happened in our family, familiar. The more, and this is interesting too, when you first meet somebody and you might just have this really powerful connection with them, there's a very good chance that it's because they're very similar to your caregivers. And you know it right away because it just feels like unbelievable, this passion, this intensity, and it's all going on in the unconscious. And I've heard Harville Hendrix, who is amazing, say that basically our brain has tricked us into saying, and this is on an unconscious level, that our romantic partner is our caregivers, right? It's really deep on the unconscious level, but I just want to share it with you guys to keep in mind. So, if you're anxious, imagine you're a child and you're anxious and your mother is avoidant. She has an avoidant attachment style. Here's what it could have been like for you. Well, you would constantly be in this state of anxiety. You would be fearful that she's going to leave you, that you're going to be abandoned. Because you don't feel secure. You feel like it's conditional love. Like you have to do something to keep their love. So there's a good chance that when you grow up and you're in your romantic relationships, you're going to constantly feel that same abandonment because it was traumatic. And when a trauma is serious enough, it's difficult to tell the past from the present. So when something happens in the present with your romantic partner, that triggers the past trauma. The feelings from the past trauma come out in the present with your romantic relationships. Okay? I know this is all kind of abstract, and if you're just hearing this for the first time, you're probably going to want to watch the video several times. Yeah, it takes some time to really get this to sink in. An anxious mother, and she had a partner that was avoidant. Chances are she wasn't getting her needs met from her partner, her husband, or boyfriend, whatever. So, she might use the child, you in this case, or your mother, might use the child to get unconditional love since she's not getting it from her spouse. So what happens is the mother becomes overly enmeshed with the child, and the mother creates a relationship where she doesn't want the child to abandon or leave her. Because really it's about mom's issue with her caregivers. So now, because she's not getting her needs met from her partner, she's trying to get them fulfilled with the child. And in a sense, they are making you, the child, their partner, instead of being the parent and taking care of you. So now you're taking care of them. That's no fun, is it? Alright. Because we haven't had any experiences other than that, and that's our understanding of the world, it feels normal to us because we have a desire to please our parents. We all want to be in a relationship, but we don't want to get too close because on some level, it's like, well, we don't want to feel like they need us too much, because then it's like scary for us. All right, so now I'm going to share some information on avoidant attachment style people and how they act and what it's like for them, and then I'm going to go into the anxious. I think you guys are going to find this really helpful. So, people that have an avoidant attachment style tend not to trust other people because people repeatedly let them down over and over again. So they became independent, but not in a healthy way. They like to sweep things under the rug, and you might know some people like that, or it might be you. They start to avoid things, and when they're distressed or upset about something, they don't go to other people for help. They don't go to other people to talk about it. They don't want to reach out to others because in the past when they did that, they were hurt. So, one way they cope with things is they don't pay attention to what's causing them distress. They push it away, they block it out, they don't pay attention to it. And it's hard to connect with them emotionally. It's hard to connect with somebody that has an avoidant attachment style emotionally because they're not connected with themselves. emotionally. So, if you're in a relationship with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, they aren't going to really care about your feelings. They don't care about their own feelings. They minimize their own feelings. They'll do the same thing to you. And if you have an anxious attachment style and you're upset about something, they might say, "Why are you making such a big deal about this?" Well, because they're not even paying attention to their own needs and desires. So they're not going to do it for yours. They don't pay attention to what makes them feel distressed. And they don't try and get perspective or try and understand or figure it out. And they don't know how to reach out to others. So they're not going to reach out to you as their partner and ask for comfort from you. And if you try to give it to them, because you see that they're upset or distressed or bothered by something, they're probably going to feel smothered. It's like the elephant in the room, and they just want to act like it's not even there. So, the people with the avoidant attachment style tend to stay away from awareness. They distract themselves a lot of time to get over it. They create a type of denial on what's going on in reality. They minimize things. "I'm fine. I'm not upset about that anymore," even though they are. They might seem healthy and resilient and like they have it all going on. They're all Miss Independent, but they're not, because they're really out of touch with reality and what's going on within themselves. Avoiding things, okay? They're trying to avoid paying attention to what's going on. And here is a real issue for them. They have a very difficult time learning from their own experiences, since they're not paying attention to things. And I know for a fact what it's like to be with somebody that's like this, because I had an ex with the same issue. She used to completely ignore how she felt about things and completely in denial, minimizes things, minimize my feelings, dismiss my feelings and her own, and just would always do that. 4 years later, she hasn't grown even a smudge. So you can imagine what it would be like to be with a partner for years and you're trying to grow and improve the relationship and improve yourself, and they have no interest in doing it. So it's difficult. They don't understand what the problem is. They don't understand why they're at risk. They're not going to learn because they're in denial about things. Obviously, there are, different amounts to this and different extremes. Somebody could do this a little, somebody could do it a lot. Everybody's different. But they don't understand the source of the problem, and they don't get things fixed because they don't know what the problem is. And the first thing that you have to do to correcting a problem is identify what the problem is. So that is the avoidant attachment style. Let me share some great information about anxious attachment style. Here are some of the symptoms that you might see with somebody that has anxious attachment style. Well, because they have anxiety and they're put into this fight or flight mode, they are panicking. They are all about reducing that anxiety, reducing that fear. So they're not going to be able to listen to you and hear you. They're in their own world. They're focused on soothing themselves. And so they're kind of going to ignore you and your needs because they're focused on their own. Like the hierarchy of needs, their body's in meltdown. There's in primal panic. They're having terror and fear. They can't think about what's going on with you because they're so busy trying to soothe themselves. So if you're dating somebody that has a lot of anxiety, you might feel like your needs are neglected, or you might feel like you're not seen or heard or understood, or there's a lot that can come with the anxiety. Anxiety precludes joy and fun and even sexuality. So when somebody is anxious, they're really not going to be interested in sex because they're so focused on just reducing their own anxiety. You might see somebody that has loud, fast-paced voice, non-stop talking. They can't have a give and take conversation. They just keep talking and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking, and it can get really exhausting. They are very hypervigilant to you abandoning them, you leaving them, and any kind of disconnection with you is going to cause them an emotional meltdown, right? Because they have this preoccupied fear of abandonment, and any even small sense of disconnection is going to trigger that anxiety. So, if your partner is constantly freaking out over every little thing, if you say, I'm going to go play basketball with my friends, or I want to go out, to dinner with drinks with my buddies, or I want to go to a movie with my friend, and they just are constantly freaking out, getting angry, lashing out at you, becoming manipulative, using guilt on you. Well, now you can try and show some empathy and understand how difficult, how painful their childhood was. Because that is what this stems from. This comes from that feeling of that came in their childhood. It's being triggered in their adulthood. So it's a real struggle for them. This is why they do controlling behavior. They're trying to control you, stopping you from leaving the house, talking to friends, going places without them, becoming irate quickly, cursing and yelling at you when they don't get their way, emotional meltdowns, arguments, escalating very quickly. All of these things they're trying to do to control you. Think about it. They're doing all of these behaviors to get you to conform with what they want. It's essentially, I feel disconnected, I'm terrified, and I'm going to do anything that I can to force you back into being connected to me in the way that I want. Because that's all they can handle. So, this is a lot of information, I know. You're probably going to want to watch it several times. Some interesting information that I was reading about I thought I'd share. Alright, so the anxious person obviously has felt their whole life like, I'm not good enough for somebody to just love me, for somebody to just stay with me. And we can form unhealthy ways of dealing with that. Like I said, some women realize that if they are seductive to men, it's going to get their attention. And what they do is they get these guys to become needy and fall all over them so they get attention because they're really afraid of being alone and they don't feel good about who they are or what they are outside of a relationship. So some people jump from relationship to relationship because they're terrified of being alone, and I can empathize with that. It's sad. It's sad, and it's a lot of the problems that we have in our relationships are really about fear. We're constantly afraid, both people, smothered, abandoned. Hey, are you there for me? Are you going to be there for me? Are you going to leave me? I mean, there are just so many different ways that we're going to be affected by each other. So it's critical that your partner always feels like you're going to be there for them. And I talk about that in other videos. But I really wanted to share this information with you guys so you can start to think about what your attachment style is. What is your partner's attachment style, or even your ex's? And maybe behavior that you did that you can now see pushed them away, it turned them off because they felt trapped, so they needed to push you away to escape. Or maybe they were anxious in the relationship and you were avoidant, and so they didn't feel like you were there for them, and because you kept avoiding them, denying them love and attention and consistency, they gave up on the relationship that they were ever going to get that from you. So, those are just some of the different ways that it could have ended. So, if you want to get my help personally, go to AskCraig.net, sign up for the coaching, very simple, right on the center of my homepage, it says Get Coaching, and you can sign up there. I do email coaching, I do Skype coaching, and sign up for whatever works best for you. If you like the video, make sure you put a like on there, and subscribe to the channel because I post videos Monday through Friday. That's it for this video though. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth, and I will talk with you soon.